The medical doctor advised her to lie on the examination bed for a test to be performed on her. But when the physicians saw what was between her legs, the medical doctor fainted. The air in the sterile consulting room of St. Jude's Free Clinic, nestled in a busy Lagos district, always held a thin, metallic scent of antiseptic and old hope. On this scorching afternoon, that silenced the professional, quiet hum of a doctor at work was violently and irreversibly broken. Dr. Stella Adams, a physician whose calmness had seen her through emergency surgeries, mass casualty events, and the devastating truth of countless failed hopes, stood over the examination bed, her composure a fortress against the world's misery. But as her eyes focused on the patient's delicate, vulnerable region, her fortress walls crumbled. It wasn't a sight of sudden, catastrophic injury that shattered her. It was the horrific convergence of medical neglect, chronic trauma, and a silent, lethal ticking clock that threatened to stop two hearts. A gasp, ragged and involuntary, tore from her throat, and then, with a heavy, sickening thud, Dr. Stella slumped to the floor, unconscious. Lying on the cheap, worn examination vinyl was Aisha Aladil. Her eyes, wide and perpetually fearful, watched the esteemed doctor collapse. Aisha, who had endured a life of hardship that would have broken lesser spirits, could not fathom what hidden, devastating truth lay between her legs, a truth that had turned the practiced, professional gaze of a doctor into a weapon of self-betrayal, forcing her body to shut down from sheer, profound horror. This was no ordinary sickness. This was a story of a survival so tenuous, a love that turned so brutally cold, and a secret so medically shocking that the viewer who stays until the end will be left breathless, asking, what exactly did the doctors see that was worse than death? Aisha's history was a series of survival instincts honed on the hard edge of poverty. Her world crumbled at 14 when her parents, a humble but loving couple, perished in a mysterious fire that engulfed their small, rented apartment. The official verdict was electrical fault. Aisha knew, deep in her gut, that something darker had taken them. Orphaned, with no extended family to claim her, the bustling, unforgiving city of Lagos became her cruel caretaker. She sold groundnuts, ran errands, and slept wherever a kind stranger or a shadowy corner offered temporary respite. She was 20, a young woman already burdened by the weariness of decades, when she met Kelechi Duru at the sprawling, noisy city market where she sold oranges. Kelechi was everything the city was not: gentle, solicitous, and offering a warmth she hadn't felt since her mother's last hug. He bought all her oranges, walked her home, and proposed an end to her struggle. For Aisha, it wasn't romance, it was a lifeline. She accepted. The initial months were a blissful cocoon. Kelechi bought her new clothes, made sure she ate well, and introduced her to a stability she craved. It was, as the old folks say, a 9-day wonder. Their brief period of joy culminated in the birth of their son, a beautiful, chunky boy they named Femi. But the birth of the child marked the death of the gentle man. Kelechi's transformation was swift and terrifying. The attentive lover became a monstrous captor, his words sharper than glass, his hands quicker and harder than any blow the street had ever dealt her. He began treating her like a slave, controlling her every move. Any small mistake, a cold meal, a perceived disrespect, was met with explosive, terrifying rage and swift, agonizing physical abuse. A desperate escape attempt was met with a chilling, definitive threat. If you ever try to leave, Aisha, I promise you an unforgettable, horrible consequence. And I will start with your son. The mention of Femi, her bright, innocent boy, locked her in place more effectively than any chain. She learned to endure, to shrink, and to pray for an end to the abuse that did not involve death. The central questions that must be answered are: what was the unforgettable consequence Kelechi planned? The medical condition that floored Dr. Stella. Was it the physical damage from the abuse, or something far more insidious and linked to Aisha's forgotten past? This story is not just about domestic violence. It's about the silent wounds of a survivor and the courage of a doctor who decided a stranger's life was worth more than her own safety. Aisha Aladil, now 22, carried the weight of her suffering in the slump of her shoulders and the perpetual fear in her eyes. Her physical scars were often hidden beneath layers of old, oversized clothes, bruises blooming like dark flowers on her ribs, a permanent tenderness over her right forearm where Kelechi had broken it months ago, and the constant, throbbing ache in her lower back. But the worst scars were internal. The relentless stress had led to a host of psychosomatic symptoms. Chronic, debilitating headaches that mimicked migraines, perpetual indigestion, and an immune system so compromised that she was constantly battling minor infections that would not clear. Her body was crying out, but no one was listening. The secret she carried now, the one she hid beneath her layers of fear and fabric, was the quiet, fragile flutter in her womb. She was pregnant again. She hadn't told Kelechi. The birth of their first child, Femi, brought violence. This new life was a final, desperate card to play in her game of survival. She knew the danger. If Kelechi discovered another child, his control would tighten further, his rage would be boundless, and their lives would be forfeit. Her hurried decision to go to the hospital was not for a standard checkup, but for a desperate assessment. She felt a profound weakness, a constant, low-grade fever that wouldn't break, and most terrifyingly, she was spotting a silent signal that her body was failing to sustain the pregnancy amidst the trauma. Dr. Stella Adams, in contrast, was a woman of privilege tempered by purpose. Raised in a comfortable, educated family, she chose to serve in the public clinics, dedicating her considerable skill to those who had no voice. She had a keen, almost psychic ability to read the unspoken language of trauma on a patient's body. She saw the flinch when she moved too fast, the hypervigilance, and the way Aisha's gaze never settled on hers, always darting toward the door as if expecting an executioner. As Aisha was ushered into the office, the exhaustion and fear radiating off her were palpable. She stood rigid, her clothes mismatched and stained, her hair unkempt. The nurse, Mrs. Chinyer, had been officious, demanding the non-existent appointment card and insurance papers. It was the same bureaucratic wall that kept the desperate out. "I have no money, no appointment, doctor," Aisha had whispered, her voice cracking. "But I beg you, this is a situation of life and death. If I stay here too long, or if my husband finds me, I am finished." Dr. Stella had stepped in immediately, overruling the nurse with a sharp, professional command. Inside, she calmed Aisha, offering a glass of water, and establishing the one rule a domestic abuse victim needs most. "Here, you are safe. Now, tell me everything." Aisha, unable to speak the full, humiliating truth, simply relayed her symptoms: the constant fever, the deep fatigue, and the spotting. She admitted the urgency was because of her husband's potential reaction, not the medical condition itself, trying to minimize the physical danger while emphasizing the external threat. It was this calculated minimization that led to the examination. Dr. Stella instructed her to lie down, intending a basic pelvic exam and blood work, hoping to confirm the pregnancy and stabilize the symptoms. And then, the moment of truth. Dr. Stella's examination was gentle but thorough. What she saw was not just the fresh marks of extreme, visible trauma, evidence of recent, focused physical assault to the most intimate areas, but the horrifying, cumulative damage. Her experienced eye recognized the deep, telltale bruising, the signs of untreated, chronic, severe genital infection, and the most immediate, shocking realization: a cervical condition that was actively threatening a spontaneous miscarriage due to the trauma and systemic stress. The pregnancy was hanging by a thread, and the infection was lethal to both mother and child. It was the sudden, undeniable understanding that this was not merely a sick patient, but a patient whose condition was an active, acute manifestation of torture, a life being extinguished from the inside out by a monster that shattered Dr. Stella. Her mind recoiled. Her knees buckled. And she fell. Dr. Stella returned to consciousness minutes later, the scent of ammonia stinging her nostrils. She pushed the nurse away, her gaze locked on Aisha, who was now weeping silently. The professional composure was back, but now laced with a burning, righteous fury. "Aisha," Dr. Stella said, her voice low and utterly serious, "you are in grave danger. The baby is in special care. You need urgent, immediate treatment to save you both. The condition I see, it is critical." She couldn't elaborate on the full extent of the physical and infectious damage. The doctor spoke of a severe infection and complications that required immediate hospital admission and 4 antibiotics, explaining that it was a life-threatening situation for the pregnancy. Aisha only shook her head, fear overriding the medical urgency. "I know, doctor. But I am afraid. If Kelechi knows I am here, if he finds out..." "Your husband's wrath is not greater than the threat to your life," Dr. Stella insisted, already pulling an admission form toward her. "I will have you admitted under a false name, if necessary, but you cannot leave." Aisha's eyes were fixed on the door, a nervous tick. "He is very smart, doctor. He is always one step ahead. He knows things he shouldn't know." The irony was crushing. Aisha was hiding an invisible life in her womb, while the doctor was hiding an invisible medical crisis, and the villain was using an invisible technological leash. Before Dr. Stella could complete the form, the clinic's waiting area erupted in noise. A heavy, aggressive voice, Kelechi's voice, cut through the clamor. "Where is she? Where is my wife, Aisha?" The sound was like a physical blow to Aisha. She flinched, then dropped to the cold floor, scrabbling backwards, utterly undone. Dr. Stella moved to block the door, but it was too late. Kelechi, a powerful, stocky man whose charm was now a terrifying mask of fury, shoved the clinic security guard aside and burst into the office. His eyes, red-rimmed and wild, locked onto Aisha, trembling on the floor. "Did you truly think I wouldn't locate your whereabouts, Aisha?" he bellowed, his voice echoing off the clinic walls, attracting a horrified audience of staff and patients. He stepped over the consulting table, looming over his terrified wife. "I put a tracking device on you. I monitor your every single move. Every footstep, every detour. I knew the moment you left the estate, and I've watched you walk right into this maternity ward." The chilling confession, the digital leash, the absolute surveillance, froze Dr. Stella. This was not a random tyrant. This was calculated, technological oppression. He grabbed Aisha by the arm, the grip instantly leaving a white impression on her dark skin. Aisha could only whimper, "Kelechi, please. I beg you. Don't cause trouble here. Please, I will go with you." He ignored the doctor completely, hauling his wife up. "You will be silent. You will come home, and we will discuss this new act of defiance. And this doctor," he sneered, finally glancing at Dr. Stella, "will learn not to interfere in a man's domestic affairs." He dragged the fragile, pregnant woman out. Aisha, defeated, offered a final, desperate look of sheer terror at Dr. Stella, a silent plea for help that the doctor would never forget. Pause and consider this terrifying reality. Kelechi used a tracking device to enforce his absolute control. What form of hidden abuse do you believe is the most difficult to escape? Physical violence, financial control, or constant surveillance? Drop your answer in the comments below. Surveillance, physical, or financial? The clinical silence returned, heavier and darker than before. Dr. Stella stood in the middle of her disrupted office, the admission form for Aisha Aladil still lying on the desk, incomplete but holding the key to a rescue. Her mind raced through the medical data, the severe internal trauma, the signs of long-term neglect, malnutrition, extreme weight loss, the raging infection, and the imminent threat of miscarriage. That woman would not survive another full day of abuse. The baby definitely wouldn't. Mrs. Chinyer, the police station, immediately. Dr. Stella snapped, grabbing her handbag. I need an escort now. She knew the bureaucracy of the police station could be slow. She needed to bypass the standard procedure. She drove her reliable old Honda Civic straight to the local police barracks, ignoring speed limits and traffic lights. At the station, she didn't just file a report, she presented a case. She introduced herself as Dr. Stella Adams and detailed the entire scene, the visible fear, the critical medical condition, the violent extraction from the hospital, and the chilling confession of the tracking device. This is not a domestic spat, officer, she insisted, her voice firm. This is an ongoing assault and an immediate threat to 2 lives. I have the patient's file with her husband's residential address. She is in critical condition and is pregnant. If we wait, she and the baby will die. A young, sharp-eyed officer named Sergeant Emeka listened, recognizing the urgency and the weight of the doctor's professional demeanor. He mobilized a team immediately, a quick response unit specializing in high-risk family violence cases. But even as the police cars sped toward the address, Dr. Stella's doctor's oath and her personal urgency compelled her to rush ahead. She had to ensure Aisha was stable, to buy them time. The drive felt endless, a blur of traffic and anxiety. When she finally reached the address, a sprawling, overgrown house, surrounded by a high, unkempt fence, the sense of decay and imprisonment was immediate. The house was unnervingly silent, save for a faint, muffled sound. She slipped through a gap in the fence, moving with a focused, almost military precision. She scanned the exterior, no Kelechi. The muffled sound was clearer now, a low, rhythmic, desperate whimpering. It was coming from a windowless, isolated structure at the back of the property, a small, creepy outhouse, likely a storage room, now used as a makeshift prison. Help, please, anyone. Aisha's voice, weak and broken, was barely audible through the thick wooden door. Dr. Stella knew she couldn't wait for the police team, who were minutes away. Kelechi could return at any second. Her eyes darted around the yard, desperately searching for a tool. There, tucked near a pile of construction debris, was a large, rusted sledgehammer. Adrenaline surged. Dr. Stella grabbed the hammer, its weight shocking, and slammed it against the door lock once, twice. The noise was deafening, a desperate, defiant sound in the quiet compound. On the third blow, the old lock splintered, and the door sprang open. Aisha stumbled out, tears streaming down her bruised face, clutching her abdomen. She was weak, disoriented, and covered in dust. Dr. Stella, oh God, you came. No time. We have to run. Dr. Stella urged, pulling her patient toward the fence line. They were just steps from freedom when the voice, low, cold, and heavy with deadly intent, sliced through the air. Leaving so soon, doctor? Kelechi Duru emerged from the shadowed corner of the main house, not rushing, but walking with an unnerving, predatory calm. He hadn't been far. He'd simply been waiting, confident in his trap. His eyes settled first on the broken door, then on the hammer in the doctor's hand, and finally on his escaping wife. A devilish smile spread across his face, a chilling sight of absolute ownership challenged. So you, this public clinic doctor, you have decided to trespass and commit a felony by breaking into my house without an invitation? Kelechi said, his voice dangerously smooth. You think you can just come and dismantle a man's home? You will pay a price for this arrogance. Aisha immediately fell to her knees, clinging to his trouser leg, the only survival instinct she had left. Kelechi, please. Leave the doctor out of this. She knows nothing. Do whatever you want with me, but let her go. I beg you for Femi. Kelechi merely shoved her aside, his focus entirely on Dr. Stella. The challenge to his control, the invasion of his domain, was the unforgivable sin. He advanced on the doctor, his large hands raised. I am going to teach you a lesson you will never forget in your life, doctor, he hissed, his face inches from hers. Dr. Stella dropped the hammer. She stood her ground, her terror transformed into a protective, maternal ferocity. Kelechi saw the defiance and erupted. He lunged, grabbing the doctor by the throat, his fingers digging into her windpipe. He slammed her against the wall of the outhouse, ready to deliver a blow that would end her interference forever. The doctor struggled for breath, black spots dancing in her vision. The end seemed certain. Suddenly, a cacophony of sirens, squealing tires, and shouting voices flooded the compound. Police! Stop right there! Put your hands up! Sergeant Emeka and his team, having arrived discreetly but decisively, had surrounded the perimeter. The beam of a tactical flashlight blinded Kelechi. His grip loosened, and he hesitated for a fatal second, shocked by the sudden intervention. That was all the time Sergeant Emeka needed. The officer rushed forward, knocking the man's hand away from Dr. Stella's throat, and within seconds, Kelechi Duru, the monster who used technology to enforce his medieval cruelty, was slammed against the wall. He was immediately handcuffed, his rage reduced to helpless, incoherent curses. The nightmare was over. Aisha, trembling but finally free, was ushered into a police vehicle. Dr. Stella, her throat bruised and her heart pounding, joined her. The ride back to St. Jude's was silent, a period of shared, stunned exhaustion. At the hospital, no more time was wasted on bureaucracy. Dr. Stella, her professional fire fully reignited, personally oversaw the immediate, life-saving interventions. The urgent medical treatment was a complex combination: aggressive 4 antibiotics to combat the deadly infection, stabilizing medication to halt the imminent miscarriage, and intense nutritional and hydration therapy to address the critical signs of neglect and malnutrition. Her life, and the baby's, had been hours from failure. Later that evening, in a quieter room, after Aisha had been fully stabilized, the magnitude of the rescue finally settled upon her. Dr. Stella, Aisha said, her voice now a fragile whisper of gratitude, you didn't just save me. You came to his house. You broke down the door. You risked your life. No one has ever done that for me. It was my job, Aisha. And you were brave, Dr. Stella replied, holding her patient's hand. The two women, one a survivor who found her strength, the other a doctor who found her courage, formed an unbreakable bond. Dr. Stella arranged for safe accommodation for Aisha and Femi, and organized ongoing support through a network of local women's shelters, ensuring the legal steps to keep Kelechi away were solid. Months later, the time was due. In the quiet, brightly lit delivery room of St. Jude's, Aisha delivered a beautiful, healthy baby girl. She looked at her daughter, then at the doctor beside her, and smiled through her tears. Her name is Stella, Aisha announced, after the bravest person I have ever known. The doctor who was strong enough to face the darkness and bring us into the light. Dr. Stella Adams, the woman who had fainted from the horror of the abuse she witnessed, was now filled with the profound, quiet joy of a life saved, a cycle broken, and a new life named in honor of hope. The twist was not just in the arrest, but in the final act of healing. The doctor, who had promised everything would be all right, delivered on that promise, giving her name to a symbol of freedom. The greatest lesson, she reflected, was the power of choice. To help a friend is really good. To help yourself is also good. To help a stranger is the bravest, most powerful thing of all. It is an act that can literally change the trajectory of an entire bloodline. What do you believe the long-term impact of Dr. Stella's courage will be on little Femi and baby Stella? Will they grow up knowing their mother's strength, or will they carry the scars of their father's violence? Comment your thoughts below. If this deep dive into a true story of courage and resilience left you inspired, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Every like helps us share these stories and shine a light on the hidden heroes among us. If you want more incredible stories of ordinary people performing extraordinary acts, click on the video linked on your screen right now. What's your take on this? Comment below. I'm reading every single one.